want the FSB to download this podcast and listen.
Welcome to the Redacted Apostate. My name is Carl.
My name is Nicole.
And today we're going to talk to you about the Victory Cult.
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
Yes. So the Victory Cult is the cult of Vladimir Putin.
Wait, Putin is a cult leader?
Yes. And a pretty damn good one.
Really?
Yes. So he is not the originator of this cult. In other words, he didn't come up with this idea on his own. This cult has been kind of brewing for decades in its current form, but centuries for its roots. So the idea of this cult comes back from pre-World War I, and even before that with a lot of the Russian leaders. They've kind of built this idea, and it's also what formed a lot of the Soviet Union and its thinkings on how everything was generated and how everything was built.
Huh.
So and I'm gonna preface my talk with I am not an expert on this. So I'm looking at this from an American with a 30,000-foot overview and no formal training, because this goes deep, and there's a lot that you can get wrong with this as well.
Is this a conspiracy?
It is not a conspiracy.
Huh.
It is.
Is it verifiable truth?
It's verifiable truth that it does happen and it is existing, but
How do you join the cult?
by being a Russian citizen. So you'll see that this is a state-sponsored cult. It was formulated from after World War II, which in Russia, I didn't realize there is no such thing as World War II. And I've got to remember, I'm looking up what it's called, that it's the Great Patriotic War. So that is what Russia called it during World War II.
Uh-huh.
And what kind of occurred during World War II is that they, you got to remember that before World War II in 1939, there was a pact between the Nazis and the Russians. It's actually called the Nazi-Soviet Pact of 1939. That they had, it was a very loose treaty, and one of the things with Germany and Russia during that time is all their treaties were just basically not worth the paper they were written on. But the ideology behind it is what started World War II. So that pact between the two of them was actually one of the first pushes towards World War II. And then when Germany attacked Russia, Russia was like, well, no, you can't do this. We're going to join your enemy, not because they agreed with what we wanted, what the Allies were doing, but because they got attacked by Germany. That was really it.
Right.
There was no other reason. So what occurred is that after World War II, they looked at the people that fought in World War II and all of the kind of like Alexander the Great, all of these heroes were looked at as almost like deities.
Right.
So it was the
deification.
Thank you. Of people that were part of the Soviet Union and before that, right? So it was this whole...
But Alexander the Great wasn't Russian, though, was he?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Right? These are... Not all Russian heroes have to be from Russia.
Wasn't he Macedonian?
He might have been.
Okay.
He might have been. I didn't look it up.
Okay.
But he's listed as one of their
heroes.
Yes. So you can also look at a lot of these people are archetypes for Russian ideals, So I've got a lot of notes here, but one of the things that I wanted to...
Okay, so I just want to go back to the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
From what you said is when everyone came back from World War II, or what'd you call it?
Oh, it was the Great Patriotic War.
The Great Patriotic War.
hmm
So they renamed what the rest of the world called it, first of all.
Yes.
They called it the Great Patriotic War. And when everyone came back from that war, that's when they said, we need to create nationalization.
No, that was before it. So that was the whole thing, is that when Russia was invading Germany, they weren't doing it because the Germans were bad. They were doing it because they wanted land.
Okay.
So Russia utilized World War II to take land.
Right.
So as they were fighting these fronts, they were basically going, okay, this is now Russia. So
Okay.
they were killing their way to build Russia as, superpower, because it's in their ideals, even before the Soviet Union started, that, you need to take land and you need to,
Okay.
expand.
So when everyone got back from World War II, what was the reasoning behind this victory cult?
So that's the thing, is that the victory cult, it wasn't really occurring at that time, because you got to remember that the Soviet Union started. So they were, after the formation of the Soviet Union, you have the Cold War.
Well, the Cold War happened after World War II.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So after World War II, then the Soviet Union with, this is the history part that I'm not 100% sure on. Right.
Okay. Well, just focus on the cult part then.
Right. So the cult part, if in the way that it looks right now, was after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Oh, okay.
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 And now there's a reason that I'm talking about before World War II and World War II and immediately afterwards, is because Putin is looking at the actions of Russia, Soviet Union during World War II as current policy.
Okay. So he's looking at the past
Mhm.
to gain power. It's the same thing that Hitler did. Hitler created that nationalistic cult type fervor.
Right.
And what he did is he looked at Germans and created this romanticization of Germany and the Aryan nation
Exactly.
and tried to use that ideology. And so that's what Putin did, is Putin used that patriotic ideology
Yes.
from after World War II and created this patriotic victory cult.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Got it.
so there's a lot going on here.
Is this how he got into power? Was by doing this?
I'm not sure about that one.
So the thing about Putin, what the little I know about him is that he has a KGB background.
Yes.
So he would have been educated in all mind manipulation the
Exactly.
same way that the CIA does.
Yes.
In our country, he would have had that same type of training. So he would have known how to manipulate people into creating power.
Right. And in the time that he came into power, there was definitely a power vacuum.
Right.
With Russia or the Soviet Union or whatever you want to.
It was a mess.
It was a mess. Right. So again, it's that someone came in with the right message at the right time and, was elected.
Right. And it's the same. It's interesting because if we're talking about political cults today,
Mm-hmm.
and linking that back to Hitler, what Hitler did, Hitler said, oh, there's this Aryan nation that we want to get back to.
Yes.
Putin said when Russia was at its most patriotic and used
Most powerful and
most patriotic and used that ideology. And it's the same that the MAGA people are doing by saying make America great by this idealized 1950s view.
Right. And it's also the understanding. So you hit on a point that we're definitely going to be touching on. There's going to be a lot of similarities between MAGA as well as Putin, and going back to Hitler, the Third Reich, the Second Rome's, the Third Rome's, all of this stuff, it all ties together.
Right.
And when you start looking at what a lot of GOP and Trump have said, it's mirroring what Putin is doing.
And Putin is mirroring what Hitler did.
Yes.
And then Hitler just mirrored what past dictators have done.
And everybody else.
And it's about patriotic cultic fervor.
Yes. And you'll start, as I'm going through a lot of these details, that term well, that's what MAGA is doing, is going to come up a lot.
Right. Right.
And then you start understanding why we're not funding Ukraine and why all of these things are kind of coming in line and why we're funding certain things and not certain things.
Hmm.
Right. So it's, as the more I was reading on this, the more I was like, this is scary.
Well,
Scary stuff.
it's really scary because I think a lot of people look at history and can see these big movements. And what's interesting too is what Putin is ignoring is how many millions of people were sent to the gulag in that period of time.
Yeah.
I mean, mass suffering.
Millions.
And he's just wiping that off. It's the same with the MAGA folks.
Yep.
I mean, blatant racism and blatant
Yes.
horrible time. I mean, during the 50s was not a great time if you were anybody other than a white male.
But you got to remember that the one of the kind of indicators of a cult is the rewriting of history,
Right.
or the whitewashing
Right.
of history,
Right.
or and that is 100% what is going on.
Right. And so we're saying these are political cults.
Yes.
And so this is the political victory cult,
Yes.
not based on any religious thing.
Well,
and
we'll get into the religion
Okay.
part of it,
Okay.
because there is a religious aspect to it.
Okay.
Because the one thing you remember with communism is that religion is the enemy of communism,
Right.
right? So, but what Putin kind of has done is that he's brought in the Russian Orthodox Church
Right.
as being, this is the model of how we want to live our lives. You know, like the Russian Orthodoxy is the, there can be other religions, but it's the only religion that really matters. And, you know, all the other religions are basically shut down
Right.
in Russia,
Right.
even though it is, you know, open to religion. I don't think Putin cares about religion, to be completely honest.
Oh,
with
no,
you.
he's an atheist.
You're right. And he uses it as a tool.
Right.
So the one thing that he learned was that wouldn't it be great if there was an organization that people off the street went to and told all their secrets to? And if you could control that, then you could find out all the secrets of all the individuals and track those individuals and utilize that information for yourself or against them.
Wow.
And that is basically what is occurring. So,
And that's so people go to confession in the Orthodoxy, and then those secrets are recorded. So
Yep.
part of the priesthood is part of this secret society. I don't, they're not called the KGB anymore. I think they're called something else.
FSB.
FSB now. Yeah.
So the FSB has this thing called, I think it's Russian, I apologize, but it's like Stavali. And the Stavalis were these kind of undercover operatives that would mingle with normal people and see what's kind of the undercurrent of, like, you know, it's 1984 kind of bullshit,
Right.
you know? Right now, a lot of organizations are classifying the Russian Orthodoxy as Stavali.
Mm-hmm.
So they are no longer separate from the FSB, that they are now actors within the FSB
Right.
to further this
It's very clever.
yeah. And there's just more. Like, I could get, that is just like a tiny drop in this thing.
In this rabbit hole that you went down.
Yeah.
Because it's the geopolitical stuff that you like, which
Yeah.
I'm not really that interested in, but I'm interested in the mind control of.
Yeah, the thing that always gets me is, you know, how people rise to power, when they do, and you know, why a nation follows, right? A single person or a single ideology. And yeah, you're definitely seeing a lot of commonalities between Hitler, Putin, and Trump.
And we're not saying that the MAGA people are Nazis. What we're saying,
100%.
yeah, what we're saying is that cultic ideology of rewriting history,
Yes.
and then using that ideology to forward your viewpoints and getting people to follow you.
Right.
And we just watched that latest documentary about Anonymous,
Mhm.
and 4chan, and how some of the early memes led into the QAnon, but then Trump utilized the QAnon
Yep.
stuff to his own benefit.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's the same thing, right? So let's talk about Putin and what he's doing currently.
Yep.
Right. So
We want the FSB to download this
Yeah.
podcast and listen. Please.
Yeah, we're gonna have some conversations.
We need
right?
some monetizations.
All right, so let's talk about the schools
Wait, what schools?
in Russia.
All the schools?
Up until recently, not all the schools. Colleges were left alone
Okay.
until recently.
Okay.
They've been added to this. So now all of the schools. So all of the schools are taught a state scripted curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts in kindergarten, and it's what's called scientific communism.
Oh, okay.
And it can also be interchanged with, and this has been used, scientific Putinism. It used as a curriculum.
So it's the same way that people call it Obamacare. It's the same type of concept.
Other than the fact that Obama himself did not call it Obamacare.
Right.
But this would be like saying Obama is telling everybody you need to sign up for Obamacare.
Okay.
This is coming from
Putin.
Putin's using the term Putinism. There's also the cult of Putin, and I mean it's.
Do people in Russia, through your research, because we don't know, do people in Russia, do they clamor the way that people here in the United States do over Trump?
No.
Okay.
It's different. It's not.
Or the way that they do over the North Korean leader?
Yes.
Okay.
More North Korean than like the way that everybody defends Trump, like vehemently, even when the facts are there.
So the people in America, they love Trump to the end of the earth, and they're willing to commit crimes for Trump.
Yep.
But in North Korea, people know that they have this dictator, and they're just acting to comply. So you're saying in Russia, people are acting to comply?
So kind of. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting, and I'm trying to look up my notes.
You keep saying that. This keeps interesting.
But you won't let me finish. Stop it.
Sorry. I won't stop asking questions.
No, I want you to ask questions, but it's hard to get this covered because it is scattered. It's so scattered because we still need to talk about Ukraine and why Ukraine was one of the reasons
why Ukraine was invaded.
Yeah, it's a cult of the eternal leader and sacrificial heroism.
And that's in North Korea, or
this is
in
Russia. Right. So it's why we have this understanding of why people in Russia are so willing to go, because they're dying by the thousands. The
it's
Russians
a cult of, they're coming back. They're heroes.
They don't come back.
They don't come back, but their family considers them a hero.
Right.
Which is the same thing that they did during the pandemic by saying doctors and first responders were heroes.
Yes.
But essentially, we're just
a hero can die because
you're dying.
Exactly. So it's a heroic death will wash away any mortal sins in a just defensive war of liberation. That is part of their tenets of their nationalism.
So this is communism's way of taking that belief of that's like persecution porn, the way that I would interpret that. And so the governments, they persecute a religion and you die for that religion. And they're saying you're going to give your life for the cause of communism.
So don't think of it in the terms of communism. That is what it is. But just think of it in the terms of your country.
Your country.
Right.
Nationalism,
right? So basically that also means too that it's okay for you to go out there and rape and torture and kill children because when you die in the battle to liberate, because they're liberating from Satan.
Really?
Yes.
So they're saying Ukraine so they're dehumanizing at the same time.
100%.
Oh, interesting. So the Ukrainians are followers of Satan. So they're pulling in religion at the same time.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. This is not, when you talk about current Russia, you have to incorporate religion into this.
Yeah.
The special military operation is the war of the army of the Archangel Michael against the devil.
Oh, wow.
That is their tenets. That is one of the tenets of this special operation.
Huh.
So they call it a special military operation as against Ukraine, and that is what I'm trying to remember who said this. This was like one of Russia's military like generals like this.
How is all this information? Because Russia seems so close, and Russia's always been so closed.
Right.
So, where do you hear this information?
Yeah.
Because I've never heard anything like this before.
Yeah. So this is coming from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So
Interesting.
yeah. So
Because this feels like something that you would hear on that you wouldn't hear. Like it just doesn't feel. I never got a clear understanding why Russia would invade Ukraine.
Yep.
Other than they wanted access to Odessa.
Right. So this also think about when you hear this stuff, think of it in terms of all the things that have kind of occurred in World War II, going back to the czars of Russia.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, you are bringing those rulers of Russia to this high, almost deity kind of form,
Right.
And I'm looking for this this line because it's the reason why I think it might be on the next page. Yeah, there it is. You are deifying these leaders, right? And you're doing it. You think that none of this was just like, oh, we're going to just do this one day. This has been occurring over time and over time and over time. So you're going to take what has already been done previously, because there's like monuments to the guy who was in space, Yuri.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but he's deified in Russia, and he is one of the main gods of this cult. Is Yuri? I think is his name. Sorry.
What about the older leaders, the older communist leaders like Stalin and Lenin? There,
huge.
Okay.
So, now the way that they kind of quell any political discourse is they encourage people not to engage in politics because people that are in power are celestial beings.
Oh, interesting.
So it's another aspect of the religion. So if you have this idea that you're doing this, you are in this holy war against satanic forces, and that the people in power are celestial beings
selected by God,
selected by God, then you will never argue with them,
right?
And that if anybody does argue with them, they are immediately looked at
as Satan
or disingenuous as well, right? So, and that has been kind of ingrained into the Russian mantra over and over and over again, and it also has to do with their like parades and stuff that they do. So they actually have what's called Victory Day, and they do it every year, and every year they bring out, here's all of our weapons, here's all of this mighty power. Look how powerful we are, and look how we're going to defeat Satan, with these.
But in the old days, they didn't call it Satan. They called it
the decadent West.
Right.
Yes. And that is still true today. So not only are they in a fight against the West in the same way that the Soviet Union was, we are now, Satan is in the United States.
Oh, interesting.
Which coincides with, if you wanted to get, let's say, a political power that was extremely right-wing Christian, and you are saying, well, we're fighting Satan. Satan's in Ukraine. And then you have your political power here saying, well, we're not going to help Ukraine then.
Right.
Because you're fighting Satan. This is a holy war.
Right.
And you see how now it's starting to like this message is intertwining of what is occurring in America is a kind of like a forerunner to this cult in Russia that is occurring. And that you're hearing the same rhetoric that's starting to spread about, right equals might, becoming isolated, which is what Russia did after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They close their borders down. They don't allow anybody in. There's a very much a them versus us mentality. So if you are gay, if you're LGBTQ, all of those people are demonized inside of the Soviet Union, and they're shown that that's the devil.
Are they encouraged to have children? Are they like
none of that came up in there? But I would imagine that there's so many people in Russia that the idea of Russians making babies is probably something they don't have to encourage too much of. But that is a guess. But there was no clear message.
And this is all from the government down, but what would you say based on what you read? Do the people believe it? Or is it like a 50-50 where half of them believe it and half of them don't?
So what's interesting is there are poll numbers, and 70%, 73% of people polled in Russia believe that the current trajectory of Russia is a good one, like that we're agreeing with where we are going. 74% also believe too that we should probably just stop fighting in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're doing. I just don't agree with what you're doing. So they have in their mind that this decision to invade Ukraine was a bad one, but they also have in their mind that we're doing the right thing. So,
economically, because they're prospering economically.
But they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the fascinating part about all of this is that before Putin took power, Russia was actually starting to come out of its economic woes.
Right.
And this is what happened in Germany as well. Hitler was rising to power because of the collapse of the German economy after World War I and poor decisions that were
But it was already making a comeback, and he kind of rode that wave and took credit for it.
Well, not at the beginning. So during the time that he was starting to rise to power, the German economy was terrible. And then it started to increase, and he was like, "Hey, yeah, just ignore that now, and let's talk about the Jews and how bad they are, and why things are so terrible."
So, just making a leap here, it feels like with this ideology, it would be very easy for Russia to invade the United States.
100%.
It would be very easy for them or to Canada, because they could move troops over to that side, and they could attack Canada or the United States.
They absolutely could, and they would be wiped off the face of the planet.
Oh yeah,
and
we learned that from this whole invasion. It's like, oh my God, they are so unable to do a land war.
So what I was getting to with the rise of the Soviet Union, after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the rise of Russia, was that they were making huge technological strides. And the former president of Russia was talking about how he could foresee in the next 10 years Russia being a technological powerhouse,
right,
to rival other first world countries. And he's right. If you look at the development that occurred in the 80s and the 90s, America was pretty scared of what was occurring in, Russian armaments and planes and jets and submarines and everything. So, but what we've now come to find out is that why develop all of this when we have people that would be willing to die? So if you have people that are willing to die, we don't need the best tanks.
This reminds me of, who was that comedian that was saying they're going to go up against the U.S. government, and man, I think it was that one guy doing that one skit.
I love the story.
I know. God, I wish I could credit him, because I think he's one of the funniest guys. But he said, yeah, it's like all those people up against these militants up against the U.S. government, U.S. Army. It's just one military guy with a drone.
Yeah.
He kills them all.
Yeah.
He's like, was that fair? Not really.
Yeah. So,
And that would be like if Russia attacked, that's exactly how it would be.
well, so Russia, in my opinion, is not going to attack the United States on a like on the ground or in the air. Or
No, it's all
whatever.
going to be cyber.
Right.
I mean, it is cyber.
I think it's going to be political.
Well, yeah, and they're
That's where they're doing it right now.
yeah.
We had someone running for president basically saying to us, wouldn't it be great if we were friends with Russia?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be great is if we could embrace Russia? Russia doesn't want countries to embrace them. They don't. They are an isolationist country.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want to.
They're like me. Don't touch me.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't touch me.
yeah. And so what? They're isolationists. They'll trade with you for money or power.
Mm-hmm.
And that, okay, fine. I don't blame a country for doing that. That's perfectly fine. But Russia's not going to go look to America and say, "Hey, friend." So if Russia and America are in cahoots with one another, it isn't for the benefit of America.
Oh, right.
It's for the benefit of Russia. They are not going to do anything that doesn't benefit them.
But that's every country, though, right?
Not necessarily. So America, I'm not going to say America's perfect. We are 100% not. But in America, we will help a country because what we want is another country that's going to be a democracy that will eventually help us out later.
Yeah. Okay.
I am not saying that it works, and I'm not I'm not saying that the tactics used are good. I'm not saying that, but we're talking about ideologies here.
Right.
We're not talking about what actually is working or not working.
Right.
And the ideology of the United States is we help another country either financially or by force or militarily or whatever it looks like. But our end goal and our ideology is that that country is going to do better, and then it's going to be stronger, and then we don't have to police it. And it never works, but that's the ideology.
Right.
The ideology for Russia is I'm not going to help any country at all for any benefit. So if I'm selling you tanks, it's because I want money and resources.
Mm-hmm.
So North Korea, you want tanks? Yeah, sure. Like they sell tanks to India. India is one of the biggest buyers of Russian tanks in the world.
Yeah.
Do you think Russia cares if India succeeds or not?
No, India.
don't.
Yeah.
They don't. So Russia's not doing this for any altruistic, motives. And if they are trying to have some sort of, benefit with the United States or any other country, it's because they want something bad that is only going to benefit them.
Right. And that's what Trump's ideology is very similar. And when we were watching that documentary, I was thinking it was interesting because really the right message for the right time. And Trump really did have the right message.
Absolutely.
It was, I will take care of you. You've been ignored for so long.
Yep.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to take care of you. And people really believed that's what they wanted to hear from their politicians.
Absolutely.
And no one had said that. Obama came in and said, I'm going to be change.
Mm-hmm.
And he did some change, and it was amazing to have a decent president for a while. But
it was all the same.
It was essentially the same.
Yeah.
And then Trump came along and said, I care about you.
Yep.
I mean, he really just said that.
Yep.
And if you felt
And he was down to earth, acted down to earth, like he speaks his mind. And
yeah.
Yeah.
So looking back on it, you can see why he was so successful.
Absolutely.
And then he tapped into that ideology of this farcical idea that America was great.
And he's not wrong when it comes to like middle class that are, lower middle class that are in the, these rust belts,
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason they call them rust belts right now. But it's not because of a president that these rust belts
Right. It's because of the
exist.
change in
It's a
technology.
change. It's a million different things.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that people should be ignored, and they have been. They
Yeah.
100% have been.
Absolutely.
So, and I can see it too, that like, oh, you're giving all of these benefits to, gay people and everything else, but what have you done for us? Well, we're only giving them what you already have had, but that's not the message. The message is you have been looked down upon for many years,
Right.
and that this is just us changing this political landscape.
Do you think Trump really got a lot of his messaging from Putin? Do you think they had any kind of connection?
It's not a direct thing, the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that Russia and the FSB had their fingers in the political process.
Right. Like America has their fingers in other political processes.
100%.
Like,
Again,
it's just the way things are.
the
now.
way it is, yes. But the difference is not the difference, but America, we don't appoint political appointees to run governments like Iraq or anything like that. So we've never done that. That has failed tremendously as well. The big difference is that Russia is not only going after the political powers, but also the message across the board. When you see information that's on Facebook and it's coming right out of Russian propaganda,
Right.
there's an issue. It's the same propaganda that's being fed to the Russians on a daily basis. So, why is that okay to change our political leanings? And that's why I think that this is bigger than just Russia. That what someone like Trump wants is the power that Putin has.
Yeah. Well,
So-
he's said that.
Yeah. I just want to be a dictator for a day. It's like,
Right.
yeah, no. Which, that's not what dictator means, but we'll ignore that. And we're just going to take the bad meaning of what dictator can mean. Let's get to, I want to get back to Ukraine, because something fascinating about Ukraine is that, do you remember that there was this information that there was a military group in Ukraine that had like Nazi
No,
logo?
I don't pay attention to them.
Yeah, they did. They do.
Okay.
They're-
They were Ukrainian and they were neo-Nazis?
No, they had a Nazi symbol.
Oh, okay.
It's the same Nazi symbol that was actually found that was on some American soldiers as well.
Okay.
That's the justification from Putin.
Oh, interesting.
That they are neo-Nazis in Ukraine, ran by Nazis. And so they are Satan, and we need to go and obliterate them.
Yeah.
Because we are now, remember, we got to go back to this victory cult. And the victory cult is World War II victory.
Right.
Russia, got to remember, saved the world.
Right.
They were the ones. Nobody else did. Russia saved the world.
Right.
So they have a moral high ground to do anything that they want to. And also what's interesting is who was the prime minister in Israel before the current one?
I have no idea.
Netanyahu.
Isn't he the current one?
I don't think so. I don't think he's the current one. He might be. But do you know who Netanyahu said he adored and has a picture in his campaign speech?
Of Putin?
Yes.
Huh.
Full circle. Full circle. So the interesting thing is that we have, in our culture, we don't want to ever look down on the country of Israel because of the Holocaust and what occurred to the Jewish people, because it is something that affects people for generations.
Right.
And the same thing with Russia. So Russia lost millions of people. And going back again to this cult, and why I said it is current the way that it's going, but it is based on stuff that existed even before. Russia didn't have enough ammunition or guns and whatever, even though they had millions of people producing goods. They still didn't have enough to fight the war. So they would send out 1 million people to an area that didn't need to be defended. But they only had 500,000 guns.
But what's so funny is the Russians were pretty anti-Semitic also.
Yeah. So, again, Russia didn't fight in World War II for any altruistic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They did it because it was against Germany. That's really it.
And Germany was on a land grab.
And Germany was a land grab. And then Russia said, you know what? We're going to fight them back and we're going to take the land ourselves.
Right.
And so that's when Chimera, all of the different countries, Russia expanded during World War II, like huge countries. And so that's why that was their expansion. That's when Russia was great and Russia had all this power. And so that's why everything always goes back to what occurred during World War II for this current propaganda. So what I'm expecting is that's what you're going to start seeing in American politics as well. Not so much to go back to the 50s kind of thing. I think that is kind of tired in the United States. Mm-hmm. But when Trump says "Make America Great Again," at what point is he referring to? Because "Make America Great Again" is the same, phrase that Russia's doing, but make Russia again. Make Russia the USSR again.
Right.
And I think what you're going to see is that if this political, where we are now, keeps going towards the far right, you're going to start seeing how there's going to be almost they're going to make deities out of Americans that died during battles or whatever. Just Trump doesn't know how to use the military correctly because he is so anti-military.
Yeah, he's not smart enough. Putin is, like I said before, he's got that whole KGB background of mind control and manipulation training. So he knows he's so much smarter than Trump. Trump is just a narcissist, wants fame.
Yep.
But Putin is smart.
Yeah, Putin is really smart. And so there are some issues. So one is that let's talk about the good side of things, right? Which is one, America with all of its flaws, we are definitely in a system where you can't stifle dissent, and that for every person that thinks that Trump is, this god, you have another person that doesn't.
Right.
Complete opposite. So,
and I feel like I'm the only person on earth that doesn't give a shit. Even when he was president, I was like, yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. I just, my opinions of him was just that he was an idiot, and that he made us financially more unstable in the economy than any other president. That's actually a fact that's been proven. But, but according to Trump, was the best.
Right.
And that Biden is just riding on the coattails of all the Trump economics that occurred. And that when people were asked, and this goes back to this cult mentality, is the question: are we better now than when Trump was in power? 2020 was probably the worst year of everybody's life.
Yeah.
And let's not include COVID. Everything seemed to go to shit in 2020. I remember, we were like, how can 2020 get worse? And then COVID hit, and it was just like, and we were like, this is the end times.
Yeah.
And now 2024, it's like, well, are things better? Yeah, a lot. Are they great? Not so much, but they're better. And So the cult mentality is that things are worse right now, even though crime is down, and
It's the rewriting of history.
it is. The question that I have for some like you that doesn't care about it is, where does it go?
Right. So, and that's another thing is ideology when it comes to cultism, that ideology, thinking that your ideology is the best ideology.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's scary to think that we're sitting on a potential that could get way worse.
Yeah.
But I don't think we will. I think
I actually agree with you, but I just wanted to say that before.
yeah, I think there's enough people that realize that the whole Trump. Now, if Trump came along and he was a good orator and was smart and knew real manipulation and knew really how to
A mastermind.
and really understood how to inspire people. He was like evil Morty from Rick and Morty.
And I think that's what he thinks he is in his
Right.
mind.
And he's
he's
so far from that.
He's not.
Somebody that had a message of, I'm looking out for all the little people, but really said that and then backed that up from a geopolitical. We are all ripe for that type of message.
Yep.
So we are primed and ready to go for that type of individual to come along. But I think all humans at all point in all history are primed and ready to go for that type of person.
Absolutely.
Those type of people don't come along very often. And usually it takes that point where there's something really, really bad for that person to rise up and become that dictator or whatever leader.
Exactly.
And it has to be like an economic downfall, a famine.
Yeah. Because remember, we were supposed to be
Pandemic.
right now in an economic collapse,
Right.
according for years. Like
Right.
right now, we were supposed to be in another depression, was what
So-
everybody was saying.
It would take something like that.
I think that's what everybody was. I think that's what some people on the right were hoping for.
They were hoping for a depression so that Trump could be that person. But Trump is so inarticulate
Yes.
and not a mastermind
Yep.
and doesn't put the right people in place.
So you know what my fear was? My fear is that I don't think Trump's the issue. What I feel is that Trump is the carrier of a message. So Trump puts it into your mind that things are bad, things could be this way, but he's like the Beast Raban before Vader Alpha comes. And I'm using Dune, I'm a nerd. But it's true, right? So if you think about people that are intelligent, it's people like, the Baron Harkonnen. He knows how to manipulate people. They've done it for centuries. And Baron Harkonnen is based off of Russia.
Yeah.
So, and this was back in, the 60s or 70s.
60s.
Yeah, whenever this was written. So you send in someone like this to implant the idea, screw things up, and then what would happen right now if you had a charismatic
Oh, yeah.
Russian operative?
Okay. If we had a charismatic anybody, because we are faced with blah and ugh.
Yeah,
Like our choices are so terrible.
Yeah.
That if we just had any kind of charismatic leader, we would all fall for it.
Think of this. Think right now is if someone in the GOP came along and said, okay, we need to have a little bit of gun legislation. I'm not taking away anybody's guns because I'm a GOP. I'm part of the NRA. We need to give women's rights for their own bodies and reproductive rights back. But there has to be rules about, we can't just let everybody go willy-nilly. So we're going to implant rules based on my belief, because I'm a Christian. And we need fiscal responsibility. So we're going to dial some things back, but we're not going to let everybody just suffer and die. We're going to help people that need help. I think people would vote for them.
Oh, yeah.
And he could be a fucking Russian operative.
Oh, yeah.
And then go like, look at me, I'm the savior. I'm hey, maybe I need to be in for a third term because I'm doing so well. Maybe we need to go to 5-year terms, and maybe we need to have a national, registry where we put everybody in the military, regardless of, it's the little things, right? That can go.
We are primed, and you're right. We are primed and ready to go for the next like real leadership, because we are in a vacuum right now. We're just faced with crap, and I think Biden would have been okay 20 years ago.
Yeah,
but
he's old.
He's old, and he's
out of touch too. I think he's completely out of touch.
Completely out of touch.
Yeah.
And
but if you're asking between the two of them, one that has possible Russian ties, that I'm like,
yeah, but it's like one has Russian ties and one has Chinese ties.
Mm-hmm.
So which evil do you go with?
I would right now go with China, because China wants to kill the economy. Russia wants to
kill us,
to take over the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, to me, that's big enough of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And you also know too that America is really good at financial trickery.
Oh, also, what America is really good at is unifying over a common enemy.
100%.
So
as soon as someone says China's trying to take over our economy, look at what they're doing. So right now we're banning China and blah, 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 blah. That's it.
Yeah, but
we would do it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then we'd be like, I'm spending too much money on.
But it's TikTok.
Amazon.
It's TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok is a loaded gun to the U.S.
So is Temu.
So is what?
Temu.
And Temu. TikTok, Temu, and
all these dropship companies. I mean, all of it is. Do you remember what I said? And I'll let you finish what you're saying. But do you remember what I said? All China would have to do is stop producing for us.
Oh, yeah. We're done.
Yep.
We're done because we have
and just say, we're not producing anymore until you pay us twice what you're paying now.
Yep.
And we're ruined as an economy.
We have no infrastructure to support medicine, basic needs, and we saw that very clearly in the pandemic, and it's wild.
Yep.
And they have the power. They have the power to do that, to just shut everything off. They won't.
Yes. Well,
they have the power to.
They won't until they can. And then when they can, they could, but
that's another thing Americans are really great at.
I agree with that too.
Is
we would have factories running in 6 months.
Yeah, we would suffer. We would have to go back to our victory gardens, and we would go on some kind of stamp honor system, whatever it was. Yeah. And we would suffer for a couple of years, but then we would get
buy TVs new every year because something new came out.
Right.
Yeah, that's what would change. It would you would have to change the way we dealt with things.
We'd get more into reusable stuff, and so it wouldn't be a horrible bad thing, and we would we would suffer for a little bit, but
God, you're like Thanos. Gonna wipe out half your electronics.
Yeah. We'd lose TikTok and people would be sad for a little bit.
Yep.
But then when we get over
something new would come out, and then, it would be the new TikTok and everybody would be making their money there. And
yeah. But if we were saying how to protect yourself mentally from these kinds of ideologies, and I think it comes back to really evaluating and researching and thinking for yourself.
Exactly.
And not just accepting, even though we know that if a charismatic leader came along at this time, we'd all be ready to go. And
remember, people think that Trump is charismatic. So keep that in your mind too.
Right. But a good 60% don't.
Yes.
So you may have like 30 to 40% that actually like him and think he's charismatic, but the rest, the 60% of the country don't.
Yeah.
So if we had somebody that really was super charismatic and came along, we're primed, we're ready to go, and it could happen.
Yep.
So I think really not just listening to the words and
see, because I don't think this election is the important one. I think it's the next one.
Well, yeah, we got nothing.
Yeah.
We got nothing
This
for
one's
the
going to
next
be
one.
this one's going to be status quo. That's all it's
Yeah.
going to be. So whatever occurs is going to be status quo, even if it's Trump, even if Trump wins, right?
So 2028 is going to be like insane. You're right. It's going to be insane.
Because you're going to have, it doesn't matter. So if Trump wins, right? And this is the part that like bothers me. If Trump wins, then he's done. He can't run again.
Oh,
right,
okay.
after the 4 years. So he's done his 2 terms. He's done.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can only run 2 terms.
I thought it was consecutive.
No.
So, okay.
Nope. So Obama can't come back. Like Obama can't run for president.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why Obama's just jet skiing.
Well, right, but that's also what the Republicans were like going on was that, that Obama was trying to run for a 3rd term and he's using Biden as his puppet.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, but Obama's just jet skiing.
Yeah.
That never happened.
Yeah. Just because he's, like campaigning doesn't mean he's running for president.
Right.
So, but,
Okay, so Trump, so let's say
Yeah.
Trump wins.
Mhm.
Sorry, this is a very U.S. heavy, but we're,
but
focused in.
well, what I'm getting at is that there's ties between
yeah.
these 2 things too.
Okay, so if Trump wins, then it's status quo. And then for 2028, though, we're still left with who would run because Biden at that point is really just too
And
old.
I would not
He's
want,
way too old.
yeah. I think he would bow out too because I think the whole reason he stayed in it is because of Trump. That's it.
Yeah.
I think that's the only reason.
And then, okay, if Biden wins, we're in the same situation.
Right. It could be Trump
2028.
against a
Do you really
unknown
think?
Democrat.
Do you think Trump would run in
Mhm.
2028?
Yep.
He's barely alive.
Yep. But
Wow.
but you got to remember these are the parts, right? Because so if you think about what Putin has done, right? He is affecting changes in the government at all levels,
Mhm.
right? And the RNC now has a member of the Trump family running it.
Right. But they are all kind of going crazy.
Mhm.
I mean, they're all just we're having this
yeah,
conversation before it's
yeah.
they're so disorganized. And it just hit my head too is one of the reasons why Trump was successful is because he had that guy that understood manipulation, social manipulation. Breitbart, was that his name?
Breitbart was the newspaper that Steve Bannon ran.
Bannon.
Mhm.
Yeah. He had Bannon on his team
Oh yeah,
at that time.
and he was utilizing the technology that
Yeah.
was figuring out where everybody. But
I don't think he's got that anymore.
no, he doesn't. No, and
Because Bannon was probably the brains behind a lot of that
oh yeah,
stuff.
and Bannon left a long time ago.
Yeah.
because Trump threw him under the bus like multiple times.
Which is crazy because, like, if you want to stay in power, you need to keep those kind of people close to you.
Yes,
that
but
can,
nobody's kept with him. The only people that are keeping with him now are sycophants that are just like
and family.
in family. That's it.
But if he would have kept Bannon,
hmm
he probably would have won and kept going.
Yep. I agree.
Because I think Bannon is the smartest one out of all of them.
Yeah, and you know that where technology comes from?
Russia.
The FSB.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he was using FSB technology against the United States.
Yeah.
And it's like
And if
that
anyone,
right there.
if anyone is going to be an operative, it would have been Bannon
Yeah. Yeah.
or an asset.
There
But they
are-
call
there
those
are
an
other-
asset.
There are other things that make me think too that Trump is.
An asset also.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, yeah, it gets interesting. Like, especially when you start looking at the information that's coming out on Hunter Biden, those were Russian operatives
Hmm.
fed the GOP information.
Yeah.
And it's not a question that has been proven.
Yeah.
The money that Trump got to pay off his bond was Russian money. And the person that runs the hedge fund is the cousin of Vladimir Putin.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah. So he's getting money from Russia to pay off his legal fees in the United States.
yeah. Huh. Well,
So there's ties like all over the place, you know?
all right. So this election, we're going to end up with whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but it's 2028 that's going to be
I think
Yeah.
that's the most important one.
interesting.
And mainly because of who it's going to be, right? And I think if there's any scrutiny that really needs to take place of like who's, because if we all of a sudden get a charismatic leader on either side, because what would even be worse is that if you had a Russian operative come in as a Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
because then you could say all sorts of stuff, you know,
Yeah.
and then pull the rug out from underneath you at the last second.
Yeah.
So I'm really cautious about 2028
Interesting.
because Putin doesn't do things like in a year. He does
No.
things in decades.
Yeah.
So,
But you think he's still going to be alive in 2028?
who?
Putin.
So, okay. And that's something I wanted to come back to, right? Because I want to talk about the positives of all of this. What would bring Putin out of power?
Death.
No, besides death. Because if he dies, you got to remember the whole military organization as well as the political organization is funneled towards this victory cult,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if Putin dies and they have just another member take his place, possibly from the FSB, it's just going to be Putin 2.0
Mm-hmm.
because they've set this up to be where it's a continuation.
Okay.
But nothing's going to change. Because remember, Putin's not the issue. It's the whole organization is the issue.
Right.
Putin can't just sit there by himself and go, yeah, let's do that. And everybody goes, oh yeah, sure, that sounds great. He's changed things from the schools all the way up.
Right.
So what will stop Putin is a military defeat. He has not been defeated in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And also remember too, defeat in war is very messy, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
same with victory. Because if Putin left Ukraine right now,
It'd be a defeat.
it'd be a victory
Oh.
for Putin. Because he would say, I went in there to disrupt them. He hasn't said why he went in there in the first place. So if he left now, he could just say, oh yeah, I did this or I did this or I did this. It would have to be an overwhelming defeat where it is a night and day difference.
Hmm.
And I think that Ukraine has kind of seen that because that's why they're attacking into Russia
Mm-hmm.
on these key facilities.
Yeah.
Is because they know that if there's a military defeat, Putin and the whole concept of everything resides around we are the soldiers for the Archangel Michael against the forces of Satan.
And if Satan wins, then
Are we?
yeah.
Yeah. And that's really out of everything that I read, that's it. This cannot happen politically. Because
Yeah.
you see what happens to anybody that stands up to him in political, they go to jail and then they die mysteriously.
Right.
So,
Or in plane accidents.
yes.
Their
Yep.
plane goes down.
So the one thing that came up in all of this research was what occurred with the Wagner Group.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, we forgot about that. Like I did. I totally forgot that the Wagner Group drove right into the heart
Yeah.
of Russia and they had it on lockdown.
Yeah. Like, what the hell?
Right. Because Wagner couldn't defeat him politically, short of murdering him. And if they murdered him, I think they did the only thing they could have, which
Right.
was to
A military coup.
a military coup. They got to a point where they were like, okay, what do we do? Because if we do this, it's only going to strengthen them. If we do this, it's only going to strengthen them. If we do this, it's only going to strengthen them. So,
Within the context of their victory cult.
yes.
So he was playing by the rules of the victory cult and marched on Moscow.
Yes. But then how do you defeat Putinism? Because you can defeat Putin, but that doesn't do anything. If Wagner went over, took him hostage and killed him, they would have gained nothing. And they would have been slaughtered on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
The Russian military has been conditioned that we're in a war against Satan and that giving up our lives is how we get enlightenment or whatever you want to call it, right? So if Wagner would have done that, they would have shown that Satan is real and Satan is in the Wagner group.
Mm-hmm.
And that the military would have destroyed the Wagner group. Because they didn't get attacked because the Wagner group is the military and they are the soldiers against Satan.
Right.
So they were just misled.
Ah.
Right. So I think what happened is they got up there. They're like, hey, we can do this. And they could. They fought their way right through like butter.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got to the Capitol and went, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Because if we kill anybody in here, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't make any change. So I think they gave up because that is the cult and that is how it works. And Wagner came up against how strong that cult is and how strong everything in Russia is revolved around this power.
Interesting.
So how do you change an entire population overnight?
Yeah.
You don't do it by killing the head of your cult.
Yeah.
You know that if a cult member got executed, they turn on the people that did it.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a reset button to do that. So anyways, so I don't know how that looks for a military victory, but that is the only way that kind of thinking can get.
So we really should be supporting Ukraine and sending money to Ukraine.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Which I figured we should be, but you never know.
Yeah. And the more I looked into it, I haven't found anything that there's anything fishy going on in the Ukraine. Like there's no reason why the U.S. government isn't supporting Ukraine.
Yeah.
You know, and Putin is so strong with his rhetoric and everything that he's doing. Sweden joined NATO.
Mm-hmm.
Sweden has been neutral for hundreds of years, and they joined NATO, and so did Finland.
Yeah.
So this isn't idle threats, and that there's real, like NATO is the strongest it's ever been, and Putin wanted to destroy NATO.
You've got Trump that wants to destroy NATO too.
Why? Why would you want to destroy NATO
Yeah.
if you were against Russia?
Yep.
And what they do, why would you destroy NATO?
Yep.
And that's the reason why.
Interesting.
Yep. And he also doesn't want to get told how to do things too. That's a part of it as well.
Who, Putin or Trump?
Yes. See, like the more you think about this, the more you start seeing like, oh, wait a minute, he wants to do this. Why would he do that? Why? What's the thinking here? And you can't, there's no answer for it.
Yeah.
Why did we pull funds for Ukraine? Why is Trump telling the Republicans, don't do a deal with Ukraine? Why?
Yeah.
There's no logical reason that I can think of. Like a legitimate political reason in our government that you would not support this. But he's okay with supporting Israel. Oh, that's right. Israel has the connections to Russia. Oh, like you just roll it around in your head, and it's like there's links and I'm like that crazy guy on the board with the string. It's all connected.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. But
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Geopolitical cults. I love it.
Yeah, and they're not the only one,
No, I know.
which is even funnier.
Yep. Well, thank you if you've listened all the way to the end and if you've gotten some benefit out of this, like and subscribe. And thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you a lot, guys. Appreciate it.